All right, so we got a little bit of everything. I think what you're going to find today is a lot of kind of big picture, what we're doing, what the industry is all about, how we're going to get moving. I'll talk about some technologies. I am recording this in virtual reality. So in addition to a regular 2D video that's being shot, we're also going to record it in virtual reality. And then by later this afternoon, we'll actually have a VR video that we can publish. And you'll be wowed and amazed on how the technology can happen so quickly. Hence the title, right? VR, it's not as hard as you think. Quick introduction to myself. My name is Jim Malcolm. I've been in the consumer electronics industry for a really long time, longer than I'd like to admit sometimes. Some of the first products I worked on actually took pictures in VGA resolution on a floppy disk. And at the time, we would go into retailers to try to sell this ridiculous technology of taking pictures without film. And retailers would say, get out of my store. Like, film is so good, it's never going to go away. It's convenient. All of the equipment is there. We know how that story has ended, right? Other things that I had a chance to work on, maybe the low light of my career, which also was my biggest learning part, was I worked on the Walkman business at Sony. And rode that wave right down and crashed in as Apple announced the iPod. So those of you who are old enough to remember Walkman, we missed that transition because we didn't support an open industry standard. And that's a lot of what VR is going to face here going forward. And then we took what we learned there and we applied it to the printed page when we took printed pages into ebook technologies. It's not slowing down. The home phone is becoming extinct, and it's happening underneath our eyes. People are not really paying attention to technology. We are adopting technology and changing our lifestyles, and as if by magic, we have new things that are happening. This is a study that just came out with Time magazine out of the UK, where you ask the younger generation, they have no idea what a corded telephone is, right? And the mobile phone is doing the same thing with film, and things continue to evolve. And there's another transformation that's actually underway right now, which is the shift from capturing a moment of time, which is what we've done in photography for so long, to communicating life over time. And if we look at this next generation of consumers, they are taking more pictures, they are taking more video, they're working it into their lifestyles. They're the ones who are the next generation of consumers who are going to be taking the content that we create in virtual reality and bringing it to life. And this is really the crowd of people that we're working to develop technologies against or for. So we start thinking about levels of immersion, right? How deep do you go and how do these different pieces of technology fit? I thought I'd put this into a little bit of a different chart for you, maybe a little bit easier to see, which is if you think about 2D 360 video and put it onto a computer screen, this is kind of the least common denominator as it relates to moving forward. Then you can put that same product onto your mobile phone and you can move your phone around and you can look and see what's going on. Then you can put it into something like Google Cardboard or a more advanced mobile VR headset so you have interconnectivity and control, all the way up into full room scale PC-based VR experiences. And today, this is what I want to talk about. I want to talk about virtual reality video and what virtual reality really means to the imaging industry and to the photo industry, and quite frankly to you as creators. It's not a small field, right? So as photographers and as creators, we are working every day to try to get visibility around what virtual reality is and the size of the market. You know, it's forecast by 2022 to be a $21 billion business. We all will live in our lifetime, some part of our life in virtual reality and interact with our images very differently than we do today. But even though this is a pretty good list of companies out there, we can't lose sight of the headsets themselves, right? So this is today, I'll call it the scuba mask, that big thing we stick on our head that's hot and uncomfortable and that we don't want to spend a lot of time dealing with these things. This is going to transition. It's going to become technology that's as light as your eyeglasses, that is seamless. It may even be things like contact lenses in the future and other devices that allow you to see content without you having to put on the scuba mask. So this is just a laundry list. One thing that I'm going to come back to later on, you'll notice that on the column, one of those columns in there, just above that second black bar, you'll see there's a lot of Windows logos and mobile logos, but no Apple logos. And we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. And in addition to this, since I last made this presentation, there's 5 more new ones that hit the market that are part of Microsoft's mixed reality headsets, which are both visual that you can see, as well as there's cameras in them so you can actually see the real world as well while you're in an experience. All that being said, still relatively low resolution. Most VR headsets today are 1,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. These new ones are 1440 by 1440. Still a far cry from the 4K that we can create today, but it just is a matter of a time till it starts to advance. Virtual reality is not new, and it's certainly not new to the photo industry. We go back to a stereoscope where in the 1800s, where you took 2 pictures side by side with a spatial difference between the 2 of them, and you put them in this cardboard holder, and people flocked to the libraries and flocked to their friend's house to look at photos in 3D, right? The technology that is in a VR headset is almost identical to what was invented in the 1800s. The difference is that piece of paper is being replaced by an electronic device, an electronic screen. And then, hey, okay, we'll mold some good plastic around that. We'll put some decent optics into it. But really, the magic of virtual reality, people think of these glasses, these goggles as, some miscellaneous thing that they work with. All that it is a way to view your screen up close. It's really all that it does. But what does it really open up? And this is where the exciting stuff happens. So a lot of us talk about virtual reality. I tend to refer to it as visual reality. That if we think about VR as a 4th screen, we have a TV in our living room, we have our computer screen, we have our mobile phones, and in the future, in fact, for 15 million people today, which is the install base of headsets right now, they already have that 4th screen. And what they're looking for is content in order to interact and use those screens and to become more involved with the technology. All right? What visual reality does for you as creators, it gives you a tool to deliver 3D, which delivers emotion, perception, so you feel like you're there, immersion, and that ultimately drives presence. And the ultimate goal in virtual reality is to deliver that presence, because then I can teleport somebody to any brand experience, a wedding experience, a vacation experience, and I can allow them to relive that experience in a headset. And the human brain is so powerful that there's been a lot of studies that show you cannot tell the difference between an experience that you have had virtually and one that you have had true life of actually being there. So incredibly powerful. But we have to address the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is as follows: 360-degree video versus VR video. They're very, very different things. In fact, there's some really, really good stuff on the market. When we started the presentation, I heard the Ricoh Theta. My background, I spent a number of years with Ricoh. We did the acquisition of Pentex. I brought the 645Z back to the market. So my roots are in the photo side of things, but we also introduced the Theta, which is a project that I got to work on. They now have a new Theta out that allows you to simply use that camera and send images wirelessly to your TV in your living room. And by using gesture controls, just moving the camera around, you can view a 360-degree video on your TV screen in your living room without having to use a computer. This is amazing technology. This is a great way to help further advance storytelling. The GoPro Fusion, which is going to start shipping here next month, I think. At least that's what the rumor is. Another amazing product, they're introducing another technology called over capture. So it's going to actually record your video at 5.2K, even though video screens can only display 4K at max, right? But what it allows you to do is afterwards, after you shoot, go back to that raw video and script what you want people to look at. So I can capture everything and then create a full HD video and pan around and look and see everything that's happening around me after the fact. So it moves the act of photography from during the event to after the event. These types of technologies are just going to continue to increase, and we're going to find them in other mainstream products all around the world. Laundry list of a few 360-degree cameras that are out there. A lot of them, you can get them for $99. It's not on the list here, but Insta Mini, $99, connected to your mobile phone, you could be capturing 360 video, right? The challenge is when you put it into a VR headset, you're actually looking at a 360-degree monoscopic view because you only captured that scene from one point of view and you're replicating it left eye and right eye. So you're seeing the same image in both eyes. It's basically like wrapping a poster around your head and looking around. It's not engaging. It's not emotionally telling. It doesn't give you all of the tools that virtual reality has for you to work with. So a lot of people think of it as monocular, right? One ocular, which would be like looking through one eye. That's not really it. It's more like this type of a look where you have left and right eye seeing the same thing. It's weird. It's weird when you see a picture like that scope, right? But that's what you're dealing with. Taking it a step further, you move into 3D VR cameras. Now, up until recently, 3D VR cameras have been out of touch of many people. The Jaunt camera, for example, $95,000. And for the privilege of paying $95,000 for that camera, you also get to pay $20,000 for every 30 minutes worth of video you want to have rendered. Right? So incredibly expensive and creates a level of content that is mind-boggling. Yet the mobile phone and the headset can play back nothing more than 4K. So even though you've captured that much information, the headset still defines the image quality. So you can take that, or you can take the $3,500 Insta Pro, or you can take, quite frankly, this camera that's hanging up here, the Views camera from Human Eyes. And when you put them in a headset, you can't tell the difference between which camera shot which video. And it's because the least common denominator is the headset itself when it's displayed back. So when you shoot with one of these rigs, you're actually capturing 360-degree stereoscopic. So you're capturing both a separate image for your left eye and your right eye so that you can see depth. Now we'll get into some of the technical side of things, and quite frankly, I'm not an image scientist, so I try to keep these examples as top line as I can. But if you're a stereographer or live in this space, you can come beat me up later on for very simplistic photos, but hopefully this helps. Distance is really based on parallax. Parallax is the distance between your left and right eye as a relationship to the subject that you're looking at. If I have a subject that's close, my eyes kind of come together so I can focus on what's close, but everything in the distance kind of goes and drops out to be a little bit blurry. If I look at the distance, it's hard for me to focus on something up close. So it's this parallax that we're playing with. Now, most of the camera rigs that I just showed you on the last screen use this type of an architecture. They put all of the cameras into a circle, and then they use that to capture 360 degrees all the way around you. Now, these rigs are anywhere from 16 cameras to 24 cameras, and I've even seen 36 camera rigs in order to capture everything in like really fine detail. The challenge with this type of an architecture is if we then think of this as our human eye, right? Each one of those eyes is looking at your subject from a different point of view. It's like have one eye over here and one eye over there, and then I got to try to simulate or computationally decide what the images that I'm looking at to determine the depth. So getting a little bit more detailed on it, the little description down there shows the two little eyes, how you have to kind of look out the corner of one eye. When you think about lenses and fisheye lenses that these cameras use, they have a different distortion. So if I look down the center of one lens, but out the side of the other lens, now not only did I have to correct for a different point of view, I have to correct for a different distortion that's coming out of that lens. So this is incredibly complicated stuff to do. There are some great technologies. I heard Color earlier brought up. There's a number of different stitching platforms out there that can do this. But rest assured, if you go down the path here, you got a lot of work ahead of you, and it will never actually look proper because you don't have a proper stereo rig. So to actually make a proper stereo rig, you need a different shaped camera. And it's not round, it's square. And this allows you to do traditional stereo vision where you have two cameras, left and right eye, that are parallel at a distance apart equal to the human eyes, so that this way you can eliminate a lot of the computational work that has to be done, and you can display true stereo work. This is very much like the stereograph that I showed you at the very beginning, right, from the 1800s. It's two cameras that are mounted side by side. Again, here I think it becomes a little bit easier to understand and see, okay, it's basically I'm looking in 4 different directions. Now if I put those 4 different fields of view together, I can create a 360-degree world in 3D that actually allows me to simulate what the human eye is seeing. So there are a ton of scientists and a ton of work that's being done on the actual optics and the capture necessary in order to create virtual reality video. In a lot of cases, the manufacturers are trying to do this for you. Humanize, which is the company that I work for, we are working to automate that process and make it as simple as possible, because we want you to have a tool that you can go out and be creative on and create something in minutes as opposed to hours or, quite frankly, days. Products like the Nokia Ozo, which they just made an announcement that they've gone out of business, literally, and I'm not exaggerating, would take 1 day to render 1 minute of video, as opposed to something like we do that takes 1 minute to render 1 minute of video. Okay? And that's not to say that any of those technologies were wrong. It's just there's a lot of math and a lot of application that has to fall into it. All right, so we capture it. We got camera systems that capture everything around us. Okay, fantastic. Now we have to take into some other considerations, because it is actually very complicated. One is all of your cameras have to be synced together. They all have to start at the same time. They all have to stop at the same time. But even 1 frame difference between your left and your right eye will, or even in a full sphere, will cause a problem. So we have to what's called frame lock and gen lock all of those videos together, so we know exactly, frame by frame, exactly what each is seeing. And in fact, the views camera that's up there actually goes all the way down to pixel level lock, where we can actually lock per pixel, so we can map the images. And then you need to color balance them. Now think about the complexities when you take your traditional DSLR or GoPro, doesn't matter which camera, and I shoot in this direction where I have bright sun, and then over here where I have deep shadows. Right? Those 2 images are so radically different. But somehow, as if by magic, I got to seam all of those together to make that transition from shadow to highlight seamless using 8 separate cameras. Right? There's a lot going on. Oh, and by the way, when you do that in stereo, you have to do it for both the left and right eye, and they have to match. Because again, back to the power of the human eye, it's pretty smart, and that brain is pretty smart, and it will see things if they're not right, and it won't feel comfortable. And so I think as you create work in virtual reality, one of your measurements should be, is it comfortable? Can I put it on and can I watch this experience for a period of time without being annoyed or want to take off the headset or anything like that? Okay. Video is part of the story. Audio is equally important, and some will argue that the audio is actually more important than the visuals. I had the opportunity to play a video game which was entirely audio based. There were no visuals in it at all. And it's basically like a Pong game, and by just listening, you can tell when something's moving across the screen and you can interact with it. And when you start to hear audio at that level, you go, okay, this is powerful. Now, how many times have you watched a TV commercial? I won't admit this ever happened to me, and you cry, right? It's the puppy ad, it's the Budweiser ad during the Super Bowl, right? There's always something out there that gets your emotion. If you're not listening, you don't get the emotion. It's the audio, it's the story that completes it. So when you're creating in virtual reality, you have to remember the importance of audio and make sure you work it into your overall plan. The least common denominator in audio is something called first-order ambisonics. And at the minimum, this is what you want your camera to be able to capture, or an auxiliary microphone. And basically what that does is it captures a complete audio field of everything around you. And I think the easiest way I've gotten to explain that is, imagine if you're in a planetarium, right? And you've got that dome with all the stars behind you, and they put all of the speakers back behind there, and you can kind of hear all that sound at a distance. That's what first-order ambisonics are. You can tell directionally where the audio is coming from, but you can't necessarily tell the distance away. All right, so there's other technologies. We've teamed with a company called Visisonics that allow you to add additional audio tracks to your VR experiences, so you can put distance elements in there. And anyway, enough to say for audio point of view, you need a minimum of 4 microphones. You need to capture audio in all directions, and then you build that up. Admittedly, the Views camera does have one weakness, which is audio from above. Very good on a horizontal plane. Much more difficult to capture audio from above. Something that we're working on, but keep that in mind. All right. Now gets into the stuff that we all want to do. I mean, unless you're a true technician and your goal is to be a digital tech and all you want to do is be that person that goes out there to create the technology and the hardware in the background, which quite frankly is some of what I do. The real important stuff comes with the branch narratives. And I'm sorry, I don't know why this didn't format. I know exactly why this didn't format. Just so you know, if you sync Adobe's fonts when you're online and you go offline, you no longer have access to the database, and it doesn't recognize that you've licensed the font, and then you end up with slides that look like this. So there's your PSA for the day. Anyway, so I apologize about that. But the narrative in the story is your intellectual property, and it's what you're going to give to the project. When you shoot in virtual reality, many people think you just put the camera down and we capture everything and we get what we get. Not at all. It's a matter of you figuring out what's the story that you want to tell. How do you want to tell the story? How do you want people to interact with it? What are your cues? And quite frankly, using technology, then be able to do a branch, and I'll actually have to do it here on the next slide. When you interact with that video, right, I can use head tracking, so I know what you're looking at. If I don't move my head and I just move my eyes, coming very quickly in headsets, our ability to actually track your eye movement inside of it. There are things called heat maps where we can tell where people look, generally, where they look, and compile all that information to determine how people are interacting with brands or experiences or what have you. The actual field of view itself and the haptics, which is the way to give kind of feedback and positive that you've actually done something. It could be a vibration, it could be gloves, it can be all kinds of different things. But for you as a storyteller, it's using these techniques to advance a story. So the example that I saw, and I think it's really clever, was shot at a Starbucks, and there are 2 people sitting down having a conversation. Just a dialogue, talking between the 2 of them, all right? You have a virtual reality headset on, and you start listening in. I look at the lady on the left, and she starts talking about something that I may be interested in, right? If I look at that character for too long, or let's just say I look at that person too long, the other person chimes in and says, why is it that you never look at me when we're talking? Is there something about her that's more interesting? And you're like, oh, well, I didn't see that coming. So then I start looking over here. Or if you look at the barista, the fact that you're getting feedback of what your viewer is interacting with, you can change the narrative and change the story in order to give them a unique experience, right? So this one example that I'm talking about is a 3.5-minute experience, and there are more than 300 different ways to watch it. So if you can imagine all of the different dialogues that have to be created and the director going through and making all of those different scenes so they can put it all together, it's incredibly exciting as a creator to be able to do it. And as a technical guy, it's amazing to know that we can actually pull that kind of stuff off. So that being said, interaction means you're going to interact with the subjects around you. So in 3D, when you start talking about virtual reality and you have depth to work with, now you can start talking about segmenting that space, because you now have another storytelling tool. For example, if I have something that's within 2 meters away from the camera, I'm actually invading somebody's personal space. I'm really close to them. It's intimate, right? It's something that you can actually reach out and touch. And it's incredibly impactful. Spoiler alert, there's a series out called the Invisible series, which is a series of VR shorts. And in one segment, you go to a black frame and you come back up, and you're literally on the floor. right? And you're like, why am I on the floor? And you turn your head and you're actually in a pool of blood with a dead body, right? But it was a decision by the director to put the camera in that position in order to emotionally move and convey that part of the story and deliver it. So that upfront space is very important. And when you see it in 3D, it's really in your face. That 2 meter to 15 meters out, I kind of refer to it as the 3D playground. You can do all kinds of things in there. That's your action field, your dialogue fields. You can build suspense and delivery and discovery of what's going on in your shot. And then beyond 15 meters in VR, it's going to be flat anyway, because just like the human eyes, the further something is away, the less we see depth. That's what happens when you get to the end, right? You're going to not have the depth that you need. So it's more environmental and kind of fills the frame. Think of it as your sound stage. All right, locomotion. So I get a lot of questions about, okay, well, within VR video, how do I move? I want to be able to walk around within my scene. Well, today you can't do that. There's all kinds of technologies around photogrammetry in order to capture environments and to be able to move around in environments and all that kind of stuff. We're still 5 to 8 years away before that really becomes mainstream. But you as a storyteller have a way to move your viewer through your video and kind of direct them where you want to go. So again, it's another role that comes back to the shoulders of the director on how to tell that story. And you're going to create and define all of those paths up front. It does require you to start to learn some programming languages, which will be my only piece on all of this. My goal is to allow creators to create content without using programming languages. This is about creating imagery and visuals of the world around us and bringing it to life. If you want to be a computer programmer, now there's all kinds of other things that you can go do. But quite frankly, I'm a creator and I want to capture the world around me. So that's why I use cameras as opposed to computers to create environments. Something to be aware of, VR motion sickness. It is a real thing. I'm sure most of you have ever heard of it or have heard people complain about it. I will tell you there's a few studies out there. One, it's very much age related. The younger you are, the more tolerant you are to motion in a headset, which is why when I first put it on headsets, I was instantly sick. But it varies greatly by the user, and the longer that you do VR experiences, the less you become car sick. Now, I used to get motion sickness. I used to get car sick all the time. In fact, I couldn't ride 10 feet and read in a car or a bus. I'd be done. But after getting into VR, my motion sickness has been cured. Because for some reason, my brain now can deal with all of these different motions around me, and I don't get car sick at all anymore. So, interesting sidelight. You have to trust your creator. When you put on that headset, you got to trust that they're not going to do something that's going to surprise you or scare you or otherwise disrupt the experience, because you got to be kind to people. Don't deliberately make somebody sick. Although I did do that at NAB last year. I produced a video called Sick. And I just started a camera and started it rocking slowly and then elevating it and all that kind of stuff. I told people before they went in what they were getting into and made a very clear title, Sick. And yeah, a lot of people got sick. Okay, controversy time. Time for everybody to get upset. Mac versus PC. I am a Macaholic. I have my latest Mac here. I broke down. I even have the USB-C. Like, I'm gung-ho, let's go. Mac computers are horrible as it relates to virtual reality. They're horrible for a lot of reasons. The biggest issue with Mac computers and virtual reality is Mac has a terrible GPU. Now, even I at first was like, are you kidding me? This is a great graphics machine. I can do my video on it. I can do it. It is a terrible graphics machine. I'm telling you. Even their latest ones, the latest ones that they've announced and just started shipping as part of their renewed focus, it's not enough. They're selling a lot of sidecars and stuff like this that you can connect and move and put external GPUs in. But Mac, although they have a great user interface, have a great CPU and a great OS, their GPU, the graphics processor, isn't strong enough. And the reason being is we do a lot of math in virtual reality. So this is a PC-based, in fact, you can put this on a Mac with a proper external box and everything else. But the thing I want to point out is if you look at, for example, the GTX 1080, which is the top left-hand column, the first green one there, this is a $699 graphic card, okay? This, by the way, is a $3,200 laptop. That $600 card has got 2,460 cores, CUDA cores on the processor. This has got 4. Okay? So what we can do when we do stitching and we bring together virtual reality video is we can distribute that assignment out over 2,500 cores and almost instantly return a result, versus Mac, which you're going to distribute against 4, and it's going to have to just churn and churn and churn and churn and churn in order to get things done. So enough on my Mac. And by the way, I love Mac. I guess my last piece is they are so far off the base as it relates to virtual reality. Their Safari browser doesn't even support 360 video. It baffles me. Baffles me. Okay. I talked about stitching. Stitching is important. You're going to deal with 8 videos, and then we're going to bring those all together. You're going to de-warp those 8 videos, and you're going to end up, we're just doing one eye at a time here, so you're going to have 4 separate videos, and then you're going to stitch those together with a bunch of complicated math in order to make a video. Now, I'm going to just show you a 1-minute segment of how we do it in our software. We open the files. We allow you to trim it so you can decide where you want your start and stop points to do. We let you choose the center, which is the default position somebody looks at. You can put a little icon down there to cover your tripod and hide it. You can put any JPEG in there you want. You can put in some control points, and then you push render. And literally, it takes about 1 minute to render 1 minute of video. And this has been sped up a little bit. But it takes about 1 minute to render 1 minute of video. And what you end up is something like this. All right, so this is what's called equirectangular video. It's 4K, 3840 by 2160 UHD. And you can take this and put it into any editing software. I'm an Adobe Premiere Pro guy. And you can cut up your videos. You can make your story the way that you want it and then save it out to go into a virtual reality headset. In this type of a file format, your top video is your left eye. The bottom video is the right eye. Okay? Today, we're limited to 4K because that's all that the devices can play back. But as devices can play back higher resolution, we'll get to a point where we can do, this camera's already capable of doing 4K per eye. We can do 4096 by 4096 video. It's a lot of data. Once the video is created, you can put it out in 2D in any device. Put it on your YouTube, put it up to Facebook, anything else. But VR video needs to be played back in the headset. So what I wanted to do now is I wanted to just jump over and introduce Suzanne Lagerwey. Yeah, I'm not from Holland, so I have no accent, I have nothing. She's actually a VR shooter. And I thought it would be nice here at the end to give 5 or 10 minutes to actually hear from somebody who's shooting and creating and show a couple things that she's doing to help inspire you. So, thanks, Suzanne. And you can, say how bad I hacked your name.
Hi.
And I'm just going to mic you here, so go ahead. You talk.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Suzanne Lagerwey. I'm from the Netherlands, and my company is Field of Views. We started creating 360 videos about 2 years ago, working with the Ricoh Theta to start with. So we bought the camera, we just went out and shot some footage. And after a couple of months, we found our first customer. So we switched to the GoPro Explorer set to do a professional shoot. I'm going to show you a little video right now. So this video is actually shot with the Views camera. And I just wanted to show you how you can use effects to grab attention. So this was not actually a 360 video, but it was a flattened 360 video. And we create these videos to post on the social media channels that don't support 360 video yet, like Instagram and Twitter, and also on Safari. And the reason why we created this is that we want our customers to be able to use all their social media channels to post the videos that we shot for them. So over the past 2 years, we've learned a lot about what's needed to create 360 videos. First of all, you need to have the right tools. So you need a fast PC that's able to handle all those huge 360 video files. Then you would need a VR headset, even though not everyone will use a headset to watch your 360 videos, because they can also watch it on the computer or on their mobile devices. Still, you need to know what they look like in the headset in order to improve your work. And then you need a camera. So there are many cameras on the market at the moment. So we started to work with the GoPro Explorer because it's the most affordable solution for a professional shoot, we think. But it's very time consuming to do the whole process of importing, synchronizing, stitching and rendering your files. And once you've done that, you need to have a look at all the files, make a selection, because obviously not all the files are good enough to work with. So it can take like maybe 1 or 2 days before you can finish your project. So we were really happy to find out about the Views camera, because the humanized software that comes with the camera makes it really easy to import and render your files real quickly. Once you've done that, you might also need to have software to do the editing, the logos and the text and the effects that you just saw in the video. We did that with Adobe, the Adobe Premiere Pro, and we used the Metal Skybox plugin to do that. You also need to have a learning attitude. It's a new technology, so you really have to pioneer your way to become good at it. So basically what you gotta do is you gotta get a camera and just get out and just look for locations where you wanna film. You need to learn about where you wanna put the camera. Do you wanna put it on a stand or maybe hang it like here? You can also put it maybe on a helmet and walk around, or put it on a taxi, drive around. You really have to learn like what's the best experience, what do you want to show, how do you want to show it. Then you have to look for customers and get to know your customer and get to know what they're looking for. So you need to have a lot of footage to show them and ask them for feedback so you can improve your work. And then you just need to practice, practice, and practice more. So here's another video. So as you can imagine, this is mostly meant to grab attention online on the social media channels. We worked at 2 different events last month in Amsterdam. This was the Sofa Circus conference. We also filmed during the Amsterdam e-week, which was a 4-day e-marketing event in Amsterdam. And they actually asked us if we could shoot footage and deliver videos on the same day. And that was quite challenging. But thanks to the Views camera, we were able to do that. So we shot in the morning until 2 o'clock, and then we went back to the studio and did all the editing. And we could deliver the videos by the end of the day, so they could post it on their social media channels and get more visitors for the next day. So it was really a fun experience. And I want to show you one last video to show you that you can not only use it for professional purpose, but also just for fun, and maybe film at your Halloween party. So this is what I wanted to show you. If you have any questions about how we create the 360 videos or how we create those flattened 360 videos, please come see me. And I want to thank you for your attention.
I got 2 more slides, and then we'll open it up to some questions. So I guess this is probably one of the most interesting slides, and one that I talk to people a lot about, which is why care, right? Like, okay, it's a new technology, it's a new medium. Like, what does it mean for my business? What does it mean for what it is? You know, I don't know. So it's all individual. Number one is, it's fun, it's challenging, it's an entirely new medium. If you are a creator and you want to press and push the boundaries of moving people's emotions, then this is a great way to get started, right? To alter the power of, to have the power to alter the mind is incredible. And if you look at still images that have been done for, hundreds of years, and the amount of amazing talent that has created the work that we see around us all of the time, the new palette is coming. And so what's your role in that, and what do you want to do? But if moving people's emotions isn't enough for you, chase the money. There's a lot of money happening right now, and there are very few experts in this field. It is a ripe landscape to put your foot in and to figure it out. It is difficult right now on distribution, on playback, on the headsets, but people who start to explore this space now, and the fact that you came here at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday tells me that you have the curiosity and the capabilities to do this. There's no reason not to get involved. There's a lot of money out there. This is a movement we haven't seen since the launch of digital cameras, right? I started my talk by saying I sold a ridiculous camera that took pictures onto a floppy disk in VGA resolution where people told me it was unsellable. And we sold over 1 million of those cameras, right? And now we have handheld battery-powered computers that sit in our pocket that can take a picture and also can make a phone call. So it's coming. It is a new tool in the toolbox. The last slide I have for you is actually a 1-minute video. I'm sorry, the last part of it is a little bit salesy, but I bring this one up because it's an important thing to realize. One of my hardest challenges, and maybe somebody out there has got some ideas on how to do it, is how do you demonstrate 3D capture in a 2D environment, right? Like, unless somebody puts a headset on, how do you get it? So this is a short film that we shot. It was not done with the Views camera. There's a ton of computer-generated graphics in here, but I'd like to get your take on this one, and if you have a better way to do it, I'm all ears.
Virtual reality camera. Capture, relive, and share your moments with Views camera. Views, relive the moment.
All right, sorry for the little advertisement there on the end, but hopefully you get the idea and the point comes across. Anything else? I hope what we talked about today was helpful. It wasn't too fundamental, it wasn't too technical, but I'm still around for, if you have other questions, happy to help you out. And I love the fact that you came out at 8 o'clock to start to explore this whole thing called virtual reality. Thank you.
Thank you.